Hello, 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 beautiful unicorns. Welcome back to our Heal the Unicorn podcast that we live stream into our Facebook group called Heal the Unicorn Emotional Healing and Spiritual Growth for Women. So if you're not part of this fast growing community of like minded women who are determined to heal themselves and continue their spiritual growth and evolution, then come and check out this group and community, see if it's for you, and if not, no hard feelings whatsoever. Keep looking for a place that you can call your home or your tribe. And as always, your loyal hosts, and Angelova.
Hey everyone, Anna Angelova here, energy leadership coach with Empath Unicorn Academy, where we help spiritual women create a life of abundance. And I'm really happy to be with you again this Wednesday.
Awesome and great to have you.
Thank
On
you.
Wednesdays now at 1:45 p.m. Eastern Time, every Wednesday live or recorded, it's gonna be here. And I'm your second loyal host, Yana Kasperczak, and I am your certified professional performance and spiritual awakening core energy coach. And it has been my soul's purpose to help women, to help you get your shit together so you can break free from that mental prison you find yourself in and build a business, life, and or a career that you are obsessed with. And today's topic that we wanted to bring to you all and talk about and get your thoughts, your knowledge, your wisdom, and your inputs on it as well, through the comments as we share ours with you live here, is rediscovering your authentic self, tools for personal growth. So we'll talk about quite a bit, and we do talk a lot about what or who our authentic self is in the community and in all the other areas of Empath Unicorn Academy that we offer. And our goal is to help you find and discover and rediscover that true authentic you, which we refer to as the unicorn, where you know who you are, you own who you are, and you learn to not give a shit about people pointing to that horn sticking out of your head because you're not fitting in with the horses anymore. And that is the simplest way how I would describe what it would feel like, what it will feel like when you discover who you truly are and step into her and own her authentically and unapologetically. And it's important to rediscover who she is because most of you are here for this particular reason, that you have lost your identity. You don't know who you are. And part of, when people ask you, who are you? Your immediate response most likely will be that you're going to list all those different jobs that you do, including you're a mother and the actual job or career that you have, but that does not tell people who you truly are at your core and from inside out, right? And what makes you you, even your habits, your quirks, your personality traits, all your values, your thoughts, your stories, your blocks that hold you trapped, all the things that keep you trapped into trying to be someone for everyone and not you being the true authentic you. So that's how I would start off. Anna, let us know how you would like to start off on this topic of discovering your authentic self, tools for personal growth.
Yeah, what you mentioned is great. And actually, I was thinking like adding on top of this, with the spiritual journey we are on and life itself, right? Like life itself is a spiritual journey. It's so interesting how at some point, and I think we've talked about it or we've mentioned it in other places, how especially when we start school, like the things like the programming starts, right? Like you said, when someone asks us, who are you, like to introduce yourself, we're all programmed to respond in a certain way. And rediscovering who we are, it can be a scary process actually,
Mm-hmm.
because for some, believing and living in one world for like 30, 40, 50 years even, right? Having that certain image of, oh, this is who I am supposed to be, right? Like this is who everyone expects me to be. It can be actually scary to realize that, oh, wait a minute, this is a false belief. This is something that I was programmed to think, but it's not really me. And it's like when you think about the spiritual awakening journey, it's one of the first stages of actually starting to integrate, like after going through that darker stages, and even with the 7 levels of energy, right? Like after those catabolic energies, like the destructive ones, like the next step is getting out of there and starting to shed the layers of all those like false images that have been programmed. So it can actually, while it's really liberating, like you said, figuring out that, oh, I'm a unicorn, and standing up and owning this with all the horses around you, like while it can be very like liberating and freeing and fulfilling and joyful, it also can be a scary experience. And a lot of us prefer to stay in our comfort zone and not step into our power. And this is, oh, I don't know why I didn't find it beforehand. You might have heard this, is that we are actually more afraid not of failing. Like, I know it's not in these lines, but basically what we are afraid is of who we could be, like who we are, like of the light within us.
Yeah.
So it can really be scary, and a lot of us are afraid of what if I step into my full power,
Yeah, our true potential. We're scared
our
of it.
true potential. Yeah, exactly. So again, as I said, while it's really fulfilling, and this is one of the things, you know what I also find very interesting, how some of the things, because right now with the imposter banishing quest, with the program, we are preparing, like we are running some of the things live, right? So what I find very interesting is how I think last week and this week, some of the things we were talking about, like we cover in the program, where we go into deeper details and like we do way more work, that they actually align with what we are talking about here with authenticity, like finding who you
Yeah.
are.
I realized that, and it wasn't even planned. And as
It's
I'm looking
not.
at the topics, I'm like, oh my God, this is like in perfect alignment of what we're actually going through, and women are going through an imposter banish request as we are going through it because we're creating it, and everyone on the other side is actually doing the work and going into the depth
Yeah, the
of
ones who
just
started in the beginning, yeah, like they are
yeah,
going. The ones who joined later, like they go at their own space, right? But their own pace. So
yeah,
yeah, this is one of the things that ultimately, like when I'm thinking about rediscovering, first of all, it's rediscovering also because we knew who we were when we were kids. Like we and some like we get to, like we forget about it, right? Like society, everyone puts a certain image around us. So rediscovering our authentic selves, like it's really remembering the powerful spiritual beings we are. Like this is what it is all about. And if you want to live a full life, an abundant life, like what we are doing here, building here, shedding those layers and figuring out, stepping into your power, stepping into your light and allowing it to shine, allowing the world to experience the true you. Like this is the ultimate. I know this week is actually more towards level 3, but just as I'm thinking about like stepping into your power, for me this is the ultimate. This is the ultimate thing,
yeah.
right? Like so. Anyway, this is where I'm thinking. Like, I know we discussed uh, as a starting point, all these things. But yeah, I think this is where I would start.
Yeah, that's a really great start. And I'm like I said, I I don't prepare for these conversations for these podcasts. Our preparation is we come up with the topics, the title, and that's where it starts and stops. So as I am putting in the title into the I guess the screen, the program, the Facebook that allows us to go live. Thank you, Facebook, uh, through Zoom. So thank you, Zoom. I'm noticing how much in alignment it is with the quest itself, the imposter banishing quest. And this is like just a topic that I just covered on Monday just 2 days ago, and that's why it's still fresh. And I know I'm not going to be sharing what's in there because it's meant to be in there in the quest, but I will talk about more of the power of rediscovering who you are. And the importance of it is that you are meant to live your life to your fullest potential. But the problem with that is, like Anna, what you mentioned is the societal expectations have been literally programmed as your core, as your basis, as your default program. And what that entails is a shit ton of fear. Like all it is fear. And another word that comes to mind is propaganda, which is fear itself in many different ways, where you must do this and this and that, you'll be happy when, all of these different type of phrases that we grew up with. Mind doesn't grow on trees, all of these different phrases, thoughts, beliefs, and core programs, which is our blocks. That one of the conversations that we were having uh, during one of the calls is one of the women mentioned how when your parents say something to you, you don't hear it right away. You hear it 10 or 20 years later. And I thought, that exactly is what the programming is. You don't hear it because, but doesn't mean it's not in there. Doesn't mean that you didn't actually hear it, didn't go in and you took it in and you believed it. And that could be good things, it could be bad things for the simplicity of it. And now that 10, 20 years later, now that you are awakening, now you recognize that this programming that is you, who you currently are, which does not determine your future, but you're stuck here believing that this is all you could ever be, and it does come from your programming. And at the basis, at the core of this program, one of the messages that you received throughout all those different messages was, do not be yourself, or you will embarrass yourself, or you will embarrass me. And it created guilt, shame, embarrassment, ridicule, fear of failure, fear of success, fear of trying, fear of falling, a lot of different programs that, let's be honest, are not only are they outdated, but they're so outdated that they're not allowing you to feel free as you once did when you were a child, when, like Anna said, you knew who you were. You knew who you were before everybody else started telling you who you're not. And even though you didn't hear them in that moment, you heard them. And it went in and it became a code for your program. Yesterday, I was putting together an event page and I pushed a button. And I don't do code, I don't understand any of these things. And I pushed that button, and all of a sudden, my screen split in two. And the original screen is everything that you see that is involved in putting an event together, all the little boxes. But the code itself was an actual code. To me, it's the matrix, right? And now that my screen's split in two and I'm seeing it as, this is my reality and this is the reality, right? This is who I think and believe that I am. This is who I truly am, which is a bunch of code, a bunch of program that I don't see and I don't understand until I take time to see and understand. And then there was one point where I highlighted something and I could see the code being highlighted. It's almost like when we uncover our blocks, it becomes the highlight of the day. And even though there's a bunch of gibberish in there, your focus now goes on this highlighted part. Now, if I spend time and dug into the actual code, I would potentially understand how to read code a little bit more. But for me, that's not the direction I want to go into. But I'm using this example because when we uncover our stories that are holding us hostage from being our true authentic self, and let me tell you, there's so many stories that you can't even imagine how many. You probably can, but it's an enormous amount of stories that keep you hostage and not allow you to be the true authentic you. And when you uncover these stories, this code, it's not as cryptic as the code to make a website work and function. So it's actually easier to understand it and decode it and then rewrite that code in the way that makes sense. But it's also a process, right? And knowing what the process is what's going to help you to go from A to Z, um, to rewrite the whole entire code. So that's what I would say. And then when it comes to the tools, you are a tool, right? So all the things that make you you, each and every one of those things is a tool. You gotta know and dig deep and uncover and make sure that they are actually yours, your values, your habits, your routines, your personality traits, your characteristics, your quirks, the things that you like, don't like, the things that you perhaps even hate, all these different things that make you you. That's where you gotta go in there and you gotta get clear on all of those things. So with having said all of that, Anna, share some of your wisdoms and perhaps even experiences of rediscovering your true authentic self and why perhaps you noticed why it really truly matters to you.
Yeah, so one of the things that for me in my journey that has helped me a lot and keeps on helping me, and it's something I keep on doing every single day, to rediscover who I truly am. And as you were saying, like, one of the things that actually I've learned about habits and beliefs as well, that it's a matter of replacing something that doesn't serve me, a belief that doesn't serve me, with a new one that serves me. That I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm more aligned with this one. So it wouldn't be a surprise. Uh, what I'm about to say, it's basically books. And this is one of the things, and call them self-help, whatever you want to call them, like this kind of books. And I know I have mentioned with the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, like this was the book that helped me realize that, oh, wait a minute, there is actually the space between stimulus and reaction, and I don't have to respond, like react immediately. I can respond. Like this was like eye-opening. Like, what? I don't have to cry. I don't have to get frustrated. There is an explanation. And as I mentioned, like this is for me, this was my introduction to level 3. And that's why I was a level 3, like a really huge level 3. And what I do nowadays, like I know I've mentioned some of these books. It's The Master Key. Unbelievable. Like when I was reading, I've read it a few times, and there are passages when I read these passages of the book, like I feel it at a level, my soul connects with this. Um, and this is where like awareness, right? Like bringing the books help me bring the awareness and clear that mud, like remove those layers and be like, you know what I have been told before, this is not really true. And now some of the things, this is the thing, like I'm not blaming anyone or no, or society. The thing is that and this is actually, I think, one of the ones, even the first, I think it's actually the first principle here, that you cannot make a mistake. We always choose what we believe is the best possible choice. And I truly believe that ultimately we always do the best possible thing. Like we as parents, as leaders, like we do what's best. And the thing is that what we as society considered best like 20 years ago, it's changing. Like 40 years ago, it's changing. So for me, reading those books, the secret, like the one that's with the movie, it's the same with the movie, right? I've mentioned that I'm reading The Magic which is the third one in the Secret series, the Four Agreements, like all these books, personal development books that are basically telling you and reminding you of who you truly are. And I actually found the quote I was talking about and I posted it in the comments. So it's from Marianne Williamson, A Return to Love, Reflections of the Principles of A Course in Miracles. I haven't read this one, so I need to add it to my to-do list, to read list. But basically what she says is, our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It's our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You're a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We're all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people's permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. And I know, like she mentions God, whether it's like universe, whatever you believe this source. And actually it reminds me of the Deepak Chopra, one of the books as well, which is more about awareness. I know it's a little bit more, I don't want to call it technical, but he was talking about those three different planes of existence, like the physical world, the information, and then the one that's like no time and space, like that core one. So this one as well. Like, so for me, reading these books every day, like I make sure that I start my day with my morning routine. And one of the things I do in the morning is read a little bit from one of these books. And it makes me, like, it reminds me of who I truly am, that I am actually a spiritual being. And it allows me to step into my power every single day. So for me, this is the one, like getting the trainings as well, learning new things and discovering. Because as I said, even as society, like things that we know now, like if we look like 20 years down the road, we look back at 2025, we'll be like, oh wow, we were so savage. So it's natural progress. We grow. There's nothing wrong with where we are and what we believe right now. It's just one of the things that I truly also align with is the belief that serve us, right? Like, and this is where the authentic self is. Like when we talk about authenticity, who I am has nothing to do with Yana, with who you are. And some of my beliefs and how I show up is they're not yours. And that's perfectly okay. And it doesn't mean that I'm wrong or you're right. So like you said, being able to stand up as my unicorn, like I am a unicorn, you are a unicorn. We are different unicorns, but just owning the fact that this is who I am. And it's really like one of the tools, as I said, one of the tools that has helped me with so many things. It's reading books. And I do love reading books, like with like reading. I love listening as well, but in the morning I read. It can be the magic book. I'm reading it on a Kindle, so it's not a real book, like it's not pages that I'm turning, but it's still a great one. So speaking of how I do these kind of things and shed the layers, and the interesting thing also is that as I read books again and again, right? Like some of these books, I read them multiple times. Different things come to me. Like as I'm reading, different things come. Like they have different realizations. Where the previous time I read the book, I didn't realize this, but now that I'm reading it, I have a new realization. I have a new light bulb, and it really helps me like put these beliefs inside of me and really like make them. You know how they're saying like with beliefs, it's the same thing, that like if you imagine a path, like if you imagine a field of grass, and if you walk across it once a year, the grass will be like it will be amazing and there will be nothing. But then if you walk there once a month, then you might start seeing that, oh, there is something that looks like a path. But if you walk there like once every single day or twice a day, right? You go one direction and then come back, then you have a path. And with beliefs, it's the same thing, that it's not something you sit down and do and say, oh, I'm just changing this and that's it. Like, it really takes that repetition for us to be able to replace an old belief and to remove that layer. Like, it's not like, oh, I'm just taking it off and that's it. Like, it's harder. So that's why, like, the books, the programs, every single day. And I'm not even reading a chapter from some of them. I might read just a couple of paragraphs and that's it. But it really helps me remember who I am, the brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous unicorn I am.
I love that. And that's actually one of the, because the topic is tools for personal growth. If we want to really tap into who we're meant to be, it really comes down to self-mastery. And the way that we pave that path that you're talking about towards self-mastery, towards our true authentic self, is through personal growth and personal development. Personal um, development is the things that you're learning, and personal growth is what you're applying. The application of what you're learning. And this is where, like that phrase of applied knowledge is power. Knowledge itself is not power, but applied knowledge is power. And this is where the personal growth comes into play. Learning is something that we're meant to be doing every single day. I'm sure you grew up on this phrase. I learned something new today. Oh, now I learned something new today. Depending on the tone that you're going to be using, it will determine what energy level you're at, by the way. So you can say the same phrase in different tones and your body language, and it will determine what energy level you're at. So if you've learned something new today, and my body language indicates level 5, 6, or 7, the higher energy levels, then great. But if your tone is, I learned something new today, or great, I learned something new today. It's like, you taught me a lesson I didn't want to learn, so here I am learning something new. We're meant to learn something new, is what I'm saying. Really, that's what it comes down to. And if we're not learning, we're not growing. And this is one of the reasons why we can find ourselves feeling inadequate, even feeling that pending doom coming, or feeling anxious, is because we're either not learning at all or learning way too much. It's like that spectrum where nothing at all or way too much and overdoing it. It's either you're not going to the gym at all, or you're going to the gym and you're living there and you don't want to come home. You got to find that healthy middle for you. And it sounds like Anna found her healthy medium or middle with paragraph, 2 paragraphs, maybe a chapter some days where she can't put the book down, I would imagine. Whereas for someone else, it might be listening to a podcast, maybe not reading, or maybe listening to a book, and maybe listening to a book where you're not fully paying attention, or maybe listening to the book while you're following the physical copy of the book and you're highlighting things. Like, to each their own, right? There's no right or wrong way of doing it, but put some new information in your head, and you'll a few things will happen. There's quite a few things will happen, but I'll just mention a few. You will learn something new, which will connect the dots to something that you already know, which will cause you to have some of these aha moments, and you will begin to reprogram yourself in multiple of ways through just the things that I mentioned is one of them. You And then one of the things that you were also talking about is um, something along the lines of invitation. Just because you're invited to something, that doesn't not mean you need to even respond or react. And it made me think of one of the ways how you can perhaps practice personal growth in your life and in your relationship is recognize the things that you're being invited to that you don't want to be part of. That could be a conversation, That could be an event. That could be confrontation, kind of like a battle. It could be a certain experience, and you just don't want to be part of that. Learn to say no and remind yourself no was a complete sentence, or perhaps no response required at all. Just because you invite into something does not mean that you must say yes to that invitation. Um, Even if it's just a simple conversation, right? You does not mean you have to say yes. And the other person, yeah, they might think that it's all about them, but reality is it's not about them. It's about you because perhaps maybe your piece that you are in charge of, by the way, is more important to you than having that dialogue, than having that conversation, at least right now. Not right now, right? It might be later at a time that is a better time for everyone involved. So learning something new daily is going to help you to connect the dots and reprogram yourself. And and then the other thing you were talking about is who we are and essentially how we show up. What came to mind is a conversation that I had with one of the women about how some of the conversations that she has with her partner come across as you win, I lose, or I win, you lose, where someone must be a winner and someone must be a loser. Where in reality, there's winning and losing is a perception. Nobody wins, nobody loses. This life is not that kind of a game for most people. While for others, yes, you love it, you enjoy it, go right ahead, but I don't even have to be part of that, right? I don't have to say yes to that invitation. But what it really it's about is you and your partner, you and your friend, you and your mother, you and your father, you and the other person where you're conversating and having a conversation is you're allowed to express yourself and be yourself and say what you want to say and share your thoughts, your wisdoms, your knowledges, your opinions, your experiences, and so does the other person. And you're not meant to always agree. You're not meant to always have everything in alignment. This is just you expressing yourself and you sharing who you are and allowing the other person to be themselves without trying to convert them, without trying to get them to change. So now in terms of tools for that personal growth, we mentioned a few. Now going a tiny bit in depth is your values. You make a list of your top 5 to 10 core values. And you can ask yourself questions like, what matters to me the most? Or what values I use when it comes to making decisions? And so those are the questions that I would start off with, helping you to uncover your values and help you to decide which one are the top 5 values. And we talk about the programming quite a bit, right? That that example of the code. If I go in and try to delete some of this code, I probably would have messed up the whole entire page and it wouldn't even look like that actual event page. And this is where Anna and I were in a call. And I don't know if you remember me having a moment of panic. I'm like, oh my God, this thing came up and I don't know what to do. I'm scared to close it because if I close it, the whole thing might disappear. So I copied the most important things just in case, and then I went, there was an X button, and I pushed X on it, and it disappeared. I'm like, oh, okay, good. Catastrophe, um, what is it? Avoided. There you
Averted,
go.
yeah, yeah.
Avoided.
Averted, yeah.
And and this is the old programming, right? So identify your old programming, what's holding you back, in ways, how can you identify them? All you shoulds, coulds, have to, need to. the catabolic energy, the thoughts that you have that are negative, that are draining you. That's how you're going to identify your beliefs, your habits, your fears, put them down so you can understand them. Also, having your I am statements. Make sure that they're aligning with you and your authentic truth, and remind yourself who you truly are. Anna, you said you're reading books that reminds you of who you are. For some of us, not pointing any fingers, I might not be reading books, but I will use my I am statements to remind me of who I am, that I have gathered throughout my lifetime of experiences and learning things from books, from podcasts, from workshops, from events, from webinars, from programs, from different places. And I have gathered my I am statements that ground the shit out of me, right? That really remind me of who I am. And I feel calm, right? Grounded. So get your I am statements in order and use them because you're meant to be using them. And remind yourself is all that pain and suffering that you're feeling, and a lot of these messages that we just talked about, the negative, the bad messages, the catabolic messages, are coming from your hurt inner child. So there's a part of you that is still a child, that is still a baby within you, and all she wants to be is loved, seen, heard, and validated. So as you're going through the values, the all these different lists, the negative things, remember that it's your inner child that is carrying them within you. And you want to make sure that you don't silence her and you don't forget her, and that you don't continue to punish her for simply coming to you as a messenger of the messages that she has collected throughout both of your lifetimes. And at the same time, because we were talking about uh, not saying yes to some of these things that you're invited to, perhaps setting boundaries in place where they need to be that align with who you are, and reminding people or setting that boundary very clearly and straightforwardly. And journaling helps. Another amazing tool I know many of you are using. Uh, Listening to music, dancing, going out in nature, barefooted, guided meditations, um, even coming and checking out the Sacred Circle on Tuesdays that I host, or I do the guided meditations, and most of the time you're gonna be barefooted in your meditation. Just an FYI. Locally here, I'm known as the, I guess, a special lady that does everything with no shoes and cutting the grass. My feet become really green, but I really feel grounded afterwards. It smells really earthy. Um, yeah, so I'll leave it there. Now that we're getting close to the end of our call, our podcast today, I wanted to give Anna the time and the space to share anything that came up for you, um, in your closing thoughts.
Yeah, you worded very good. You used a very good word actually, space. And the two things that came to my mind, and I think it's actually a very good way to wrap things up, is when you also mentioned the inner child.
Mhm.
Ultimately, when we uncovering our true self, like our authentic selves, it's all about really accepting and loving, like really accepting and loving yourself, like really being comfortable with who you are. And yes, it might mean that, like Yana, what you were saying, that the horses around you go and do something and you don't. But you're perfectly okay with this because this is who you are, not just okay. This is who you are, like your values and all these things. So it all comes with down to being in love with you in a like that healthy, like loving yourself, accepting yourself, and like really allowing yourself to be who you are, regardless of what others are doing. And why I said the word space, because a lot of the time, like when it comes to uncovering ourselves, like one of the things that comes to my mind and that really, like it's really helpful is introspection. And like nowadays we're so busy, and the moment we feel bored, like this thing is right next to us and we unlock it and that's it, like start going through things, giving ourselves the space to actually think, to be with ourselves. And I know, Yana, you love your bubble baths and things like this. It might just be sitting on the couch, and even when someone is watching TV, uh, just being within your thoughts and really figuring out, who am I, like you said, with your values, like who am I, and who I am right now, by the way. Like it changes, like it's not set in stone, like we keep on uncovering, we keep on growing. So for me, wrapping it up with like just thinking about rediscovering your authentic selves and the tools that you can use. Yes, there are a lot of tools, but ultimately it comes down to falling in love with you, with who you are, owning it, shining your light, and giving your space, like giving your space to keep on reinventing yourself. So yeah, I think this is it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful to wrap it up. The way that I would interpret it in this simple form for me is you get to really know yourself in the silence of the world, right? When you're not distracting yourself with outside noises. Because often I might be watching something, listening to something, even that music, as great as it is, it's still a distraction. It's still something that silences your boredom and gets rid of your boredom. But boredom itself is important. And initially, you might find yourself feeling lonely when you are alone with yourself, but eventually you will find peace and safety within yourself with yourself. And even though you are alone, you won't feel lonely and you won't even feel alone. Meanwhile, at some points during your spiritual awakening growth and journey, you might find yourself in different environments where there's a lot of people around you. And even though you're not alone, you feel lonely. But when you are alone, you don't feel lonely. Right? It's interesting how it is, because really I feel like it comes down to connection. So you might be in a place where there's so many different people, but you feel lonely because you can't actually connect and have a conversation that fuels you and recharges you with anyone in that space. And that is what can cause us spiritual beings called humans feel lonely. So that's how I would wrap it up. Thank you, Anna, for being on here. Thank you, everybody who was here on here live. And I see Rebecca was on here live commenting away. Thank you for sharing. And Rebecca called me a moss girl. Yes, I am. I love my moss. And a lot of my meditations contain moss, and we are in a forest, and you're going to feel it squishing, and it's going to be soft, beautiful carpet. So I love nature, and that this is how we can get out there outside in the middle of winter and feel the moss even though it's covered with layers and layers of snow. We here in center Wellington, we have about 6 inches of snow in total, and the snow was still falling before I came on here. But aside from the weather, which is a mundane conversation, I would love to actually hear, we would love to hear, what was your biggest takeaway from this whole entire podcast? This is always going to be a two-step process. What's your biggest takeaway? And then most importantly, what are you going to do with this takeaway? Because knowledge without application, without action, is not power. You need to know what you're learning and then apply what you learned. So what is your biggest takeaway? Because you learned something, most likely about yourself, or what you're going to tap into, and then what are you going to do about it? And or how are you going to do? you've discovered. Otherwise, we will see each other next week for another one of these magical podcasts. Heal the Unicorn right here live in this Facebook community, Heal the Unicorn Emotional Healing Spiritual Growth for Women, live at 1:45 p.m. Eastern Time. And until we see each other next time, have an amazing the rest of your day and the rest of your
Yeah,
week.
before we go, if you haven't registered for the training,
Oh,
the
yes.
workshop the next Friday, we are actually hosting a workshop to break free from self-doubt, which is one of the things that
Great.
holds us back. So I think the post is in the featured section. So go ahead, register. You do need to go to the page and register, by the way.
Yeah.
It will be a little bit of doing as well. Like it's not just
Yeah, it's a workshop.
yeah, it's a workshop, and we'll actually see each other on Zoom. So it'll be a definitely different experience. So
Mhm.
if you're interested, hop on, and we'd love to see you there next Friday, 24th, I think.
Great reminder, because clearly I forgot about that one, even though this is what we've been doing and preparing.
And I'm about to sneeze.
Achoo, bless you. So we then hope to see you next week on the podcast, and then 2 days later on Friday in the workshop. Like Anna said, make sure that you actually do register. So follow the post. They'll bring you to the event page where there's a link to register in there as well. And also I have it posted on my personal page as well with the link, just in case you get lost and confused with the event page. But even though it's straightforward, I know I myself have gotten lost and confused with certain things when I was just starting off on this platform. But otherwise, we'll see you twice next week. And until we see you then, have an amazing rest of the week. Bye,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.